after hours and hours of listening to these two beautiful dynamic drive headphones from Kennerton, the differences have become pretty clear to me, and I wanted to share my thoughts on the Kennerton Magni and the LSA HP-2. So I said in the intro, these two Kennertons, and if you've watched the channel, you know I've probably sorted this out before, but Underwood Hi-Fi is a US-based company that works with a lot of other manufacturers to bring variants of their products to market, typically sort of cost optimized. They would also probably say sound optimized. So this is basically a variant of the Kennerton Gjallarhorn GH50, made for LSA, made for Underwood, sold under the brand LSA in the US. This guy is the Kennerton Magni, sold directly from Kennerton branded, etc. Both of these headphones use a 50 millimeter graphene membrane driver. To my knowledge, it's the same driver. They share a lot of sort of physical, structural components here in terms of sort of the headband, and sort of the overall geometries and design, the 3.5 millimeter jacks and all that sort of thing. But they're actually very, very different headphones once you get into it, once you spend some time listening to them. So we'll start with the Magni. It was actually the first Kennerton I ever owned and heard, and it blew me away so much that I've been on a Kennerton rampage since then, and really have been loving pretty much everything I hear from these guys. But this was my sort of gateway drug to the Kennerton family. And if you're getting very bored with me talking about Kennerton stuff, you'll get a reprieve after this video. I've got some other videos coming up with some ZMF stuff, the RME 80i2, I forget, but a few other things, non-Kennerton related. some Stax stuff. So anyway, but let's get back on topic. So these Magni were the first thing I'd heard from Kennerton, and right out of the box, plugging them in, they really captured my attention. They've got this very sort of alive sound to them, which I've now seen that sort of house sound run all the way through Kennerton's line of products, from these closed back dynamic drivers to their big open back planars. They all seem to have this character that I think is really attractive to me, which is that they feel very natural and very real in their presentation. Nothing sort of artificial or overly technical, but they've still got a lot of great detail. They've got a lot of the kind of audiophile nerd out stuff that you'd want in a high-end headphone, but without sort of destroying the musicality of the listening experience. So I describe these guys as on kind of the warmer, thicker side. I feel like the presentation is pretty, like I said, it's fun and it's sort of vibrant and alive, but it's also got a lot of weight behind it. All the midtones are just really, really strong and really push, and I feel like it's got a lot of impact. It's not like a sort of a bass cannon headphone that's just like slamming you in the head or in the eardrum, but it's got a lot of drive to it. I think, speaking of drive, they're very easy to drive, very low impedance, very easy to drive, and so they work. These and the HP-2s or Gjallarhorns are great sort of for on the road if you want to bring a nice little setup with you when you travel. I think they're very, I've driven both of them off the Cord Mojo very successfully. Very easy to drive. I think drive them right off your phone if you were in a pinch. Comfort for me is so on these, and there's a whole thing with this band about sort of getting the right kink here to get the right pressure, and that becomes a real issue with the HP-2. I'll talk about in a sec. But it's got this same sort of suspension strap thing, and it's interesting. I've had a handful of these headphones now, and it's so different each pair I try on as to whether I'm like, oh yeah, that works great and it's comfy, or I'm like, hot spot and kind of awkward fit. So I don't know if it just comes down to how each one's bent or the combination of the weight of the cups and anyway, it's a mystery to me. Just to take a side tangent, these headphones did have a problem and needed a repair. And this is one of the things that I was worried about dealing with a company that's based in Russia is, would they service things? How hard would they be to repair? So I reached out to them. Basically what had happened is, I can't remember if the left or right now. I think the right jack itself, the actual jack was sort of not working. It wasn't making a good connection. So you'd kind of get little hits of audio, but then it'd go away. And so I wrote them, I explained the situation. They wrote back pretty quick and said like, yeah, no problem. We'll take care of it for you. Just let us kind of figure out how to ship them back and you know, we'll get it all set up. So it took a while. Eventually they basically said, hey, take the headband off. We don't really want to pay to ship all that, which is pretty easy. I love their stuff because it's like, it's very like workshop. It's like the solutions of how things are put together just make sense. You know, they're very accessible, but well thought through. So you just take these screws out. These things will come off the band. The cups come right off. Really easy. And since, you know, they're not wired together or anything, the two cups are just independent. Popped them in a box. They had a UPS guy come, or actually I dropped them off at a UPS shop with a label and duty papers they'd given me. And they went back and, you know, communication was kind of slow, and I pinged them a few times just to be like, how we doing? And they're like, yeah, we're getting to it. And then eventually they're like, okay, they're ready. And they sent them back. So the whole process, I think, took 6 weeks from start to finish, which is kind of painful, but at the same time, they had to go around the world. And I think these guys did a nice job of honoring their warranty. They paid for the shipping both ways. And so, I mean, that's really about all you can ask for. I will say my pads did smell a little bit like smoke when they came back. So I don't know if they were the same pads, different pads, if they're just smoking in the workshop, but didn't bother me too much. It was just kind of funny. So anyway, yeah, that's these guys. And I'll come back to them in a sec. Let's talk about the HP-2s. So the more natural comparison would be for me to say, oh, well, let's do the HP-1s, which are basically the LSA version of the Magni with the HP-2s. Or let's do the Magnis with the Gjallarhorn GH50s. That would be the more logical comparison, because it's a little weird comparing cross brands, but they are ultimately at the end of the day, made by Kennerton, and I think pretty much the same architecture. There's some differences. If you go and look up the Gjallarhorns, they have a nice like leather padded cover, and they look a lot better than these. I don't think there's any way to deny that. I don't love the wood color choices of these. I just don't think these look that great compared. But you know, to each their own on that. But these things are super light. I mean, that's kind of crazy. These are like big chunky steel plates. And this is all just like wood, like light, I don't know, maple, something very, very light wood. So these things are just kind of a dream on your head in terms of weight. That being said, they have some challenges right out of the box. They did not sound good to me. So what I wanted when I moved from the Magni to the HP-2s was, one of my complaints about the Magni is, well, it's got a lot of detail. It gets a little congested sometimes with sort of dense music, and you start to lose separation and definition between things, and it just kind of becomes a wall of noise. That's probably, I mean, that's definitely overstating it, but if we're going to audiophile nitpick here, I think that's my criticism. That's where these sort of fall down a little bit, is they can get a little bloomy. The bass can sort of, the sort of lower bass can sort of, or lower mids can sort of take over and start to bloom through everything. And it, yeah, anyway, so that's my only complaint there. And so all of the reviews I'd read of these, and of the GH50s seemed to sort of suggest that they were a lot, that the presentation was a lot more sort of smart and sophisticated, and parse those things out better. So I was like, great, if I can get the warmth and the aliveness of the Magni, but I can get back some of that lost detail and separation, that sounds perfect. So when I got these and I put them on, they just sounded really thin and dry, and like I could tell there was a lot of detail there, but it just wasn't the same experience for me. And you know, I sort of poked around and everyone said they got to break in and you got to get the clamp right. And this comes back to this little bend that I was mentioning before, is that the Magni are very forgiving. You can kind of get them half on your ear or whatever. They still sound great. The HP2s are not forgiving. They really need the right amount of clamp. They really need the right amount of seal, or the bass is just almost non-existent and the sound becomes very thin and dry and cold. And so a bunch of bending and pressure testing, a bit of time of just letting the pads sort of, sink in and just, break in, just get comfy. And then I think letting the drivers break in. I got the Magnis used, so they were already very broken, and I don't know if the process would have been the same. But the HP2s, they needed like 100 hours. So some of that was on my ears, some of that was not, just playing music through them at night. But they really did need a break-in. So the pads need a break-in, the the band needs the right clamp, and the drivers need a break-in. But after that, I got what the hype was about. They really start to deliver on that detail and separation I want, but also, still having that very natural, very, sort of alive and smooth and musical sound. Now, they're still definitely sort of thinner and drier and lighter than the Magni. And that's sort of how I'd sort of sum these guys up, is that I think the Magni's it's like the beautiful bruiser. It's got great, great detail, great energy, but it's much smoother, it's much warmer, and it's got this great bass and sort of impact, where the HP2 is much better detail, much better separation. It's very fast. It's got a lot of energy to it. And it's got sort of this sweetness to it. I think like you listen to stringed instruments, cellos, violins, etc. They really captivate you on this. They really pull you in. Whereas I think this feels a little bit more like a rock and roll headphone. I don't know. Take it or leave that last comment. I don't know if I'd back that one up completely, but those, the type of music that really captures me on this is that stuff where I really want to sink into the details, and then the Magni satisfies me a little bit more when I kind of want to rock out. The sort of feel of where the sound is a bit different. I think on the Magni it's a bit more sort of close in, it sort of sits on you, and then the HP2s kind of have this interesting trick where some of the sound, like the real center mids, upper mids, like vocals especially, really sit inside your head, but then a lot of instrumentation sort of sits out and around your head. So they've got this like very spacious but very intimate thing going on, which I can't think of another headphone that sort of has that combination. And that's actually what took time for my brain to adjust when I was first listening to them. But it's very addictive once you kind of dial your brain into that sort of setting. I think I'm used to headphones that either feel sort of off your head and really light and spacey, or headphones that feel really sort of, tight in and warm and, sort of like they're holding your head. But these sort of do both, but with different parts of the spectrum, in my experience. Anyway, bit of a ramble per usual. I endorse them both. Not that what I say matters, but very different. I would of course love to hear the GH50s next to the Magnis. I'd love to hear the HP1 next to the HP2. So that's all for that's all the grain of salt stuff to recognize with this. Price wise, these two would be kind of similar prices new. That's what's also kind of interesting in comparing them. The Magni is about $850 American USD, and the HP2 is like $800 delivered. So These are actually an interesting comparison price-wise, but I think sound-wise it'd be very cool to do the all Kennerton versus the all LSA. Anyway, super great closebacks, very enjoyable, very different sound than a lot of other closebacks I've heard, and yeah. Okay, that's it. If you like this one or any of the other ones on the channel, go ahead and subscribe. I'm getting these things out, every week or two. If you got experiences with, either the HP-1 or the GH50, and you can fill in some gaps that I might have missed, shoot it down in the comments. Otherwise, Signcraft signing out.